Nerdrotic.com.
In the sea of creative sewage that is current year Hollywood, occasionally we get a life raft. Something that isn't just a piece of content to be later put on or directly put on a streaming service. A film that reminds us why we like going to the theaters in the first place. A movie that remembers what Hollywood is supposed to be, entertainment. In most cases, when it comes to blockbusters, and let's be real, we're not really getting many of those. The films tend to be a sequel from something held over from the before times. No, not from before COVID, from before 2016. In this case, it's no different with John Wick Chapter 4, the fourth film in a Keanu Reeves action franchise that started in 2014, and it was excellent. Now, I did take the time to watch all three before I went and saw the fourth, and it is necessary. You at least need to see John Wick 3. And if you haven't seen John Wick at all, what the hell are you waiting for? Why are you watching me? Go see it.
You can thank me later.
John Wick Chapter 4 doesn't have a previously on recap of events. It hits the ground running, stopping occasionally to add a little sprinkle of exposition and a lot of new lore. And it's almost 3-hour runtime. Yes, it is long, but there is a reason for that. Back in August of 2020, the CEO of Lionsgate confirmed that they were doing a fifth film, while it was initially intended to be shot back-to-back with the fourth installment in March 2021. Lionsgate opted to delay production and move forward with just a fourth chapter. I think that was a great decision because this film has a brilliant ending, and we'll get into that in the very brief spoiler section. In my mind, nothing will equal John Wick, the first film. It is a hard-boiled action revenge story with a lot of style that was co-directed by Chad Stahelski and David Leitch. And your mileage may vary on this, but John Wick 2 and 3 became something completely different. Still a very stylized action revenge fantasy, expanding the lore from just the Continental to the High Table. Again, basically going from action flick to action odyssey. At times, it gets a bit ridiculous and bonkers.
That was a pretty good fight, huh?
But I am completely okay with it. Chapter 4 is easily my second favorite John Wick film, and again, it has a really solid ending, and at least for now, it ends.
John Wick, no one gets a free ride.
Yeah, exactly.
No one gets out.
John is still on the run after being deemed excommunicado by the High Table. He has allied himself with the King of the Bowery and has decided to fight back. He once again seeks out the Elder, the one who sits above the High Table, and finds out it's a different guy. He kills him anyway, even though it's completely meaningless because they'll just replace him with another. And there are dire consequences to anyone who aided John Wick, including Winston, whose aid was very questionable at the end of John Wick 3. Winston gets a visit from the Harbinger, played by the brilliant Clancy Brown, who just makes everything cooler. And after the Continental narrowly survives being deconsecrated, it's now condemned. Winston is ordered to meet the Marquis Vincent de Gramont, who is a crime boss appointed by the High Table to reassert their authority, who immediately strips Winston of his management status and demolishes the Continental, and that's not all. And now with the deposed King of the Bowery, the excommunicado Winston, and the excommunicado John, they all have to kind of work together to get their way back into the High Table to enact their revenge. The Marquis, no, not that Marquis, well, maybe, Vincent de Gramont then returns home to hire a former friend of John Wick, Donnie Yen's Kane, who is now blind. He was out, but he gets pulled back in due to some leverage. And all this is followed by a hell of a lot of action, all while John Wick is just trying to survive long enough to figure out a way to get out from under the High Table. But the reason I watch John Wick anyway is for the action, and this does not let you down. This has some of the best in the series. Starting with, which is probably my second favorite action scene in the film, the Osaka Continental, with Hiroyuki Sanada Shimazu as manager, and his concierge daughter Akira. And what starts out as a battle with guns, bows and arrows, katanas, and yes, nunchucks, sorry Shad, ends with Hiroyuki Sanada versus Donnie Yen. Doesn't really get cooler than that. There's a surreal and ridiculous battle at a Berlin nightclub against Scott Adkins in a fat suit, and I loved it, and that's followed by a brilliant and bonkers scene at some roundabout in front of a French landmark. I'm sure I triggered some Europeans with that. The escalation is due to the High Table basically sending absolutely everyone after John Wick, and the bounty keeps going up. Now, after the ridiculously fun fight at that little French roundabout, they end up in an apartment building and we get the best single shot of the entire film series. A description won't do it justice. It's a bird's eye view single shot of John Wick killing a lot of people with dragon breath rounds or phosphorus rounds. But it doesn't end there. That's followed by a ridiculous and insane scuffle on a stairway. Also, John Wick can get to an old school duel, fully into the realm of fantasy. So at this point, you just kind of got to throw logic and reason outside the window. Yes, John Wick has his bulletproof suit, and no one thinks to shoot him in the head. Keanu is Keanu in this film, and he is the badass Baba Yaga, but he still manages to be lovable. We have a new character, the Tracker, who is called the Nobody. No, not that Nobody, which was written by Derek Kolstad, who was a writer from the first John Wick. Lawrence Fishburne returns as the Bowery King, and he's great in the scenes he's in. The very formidable and short Ian McShane is brilliant once again as the enigmatic Winston. And Bill Skarsgård is probably the best villain from any of the John Wick films as the Maquis. But the man who steals the show is Donnie Yen's Kane, who just owns every scene he's in. His fighting is just epic, and the man's pushing 60. And he can still kick everyone's ass. And I have no problem with the blind master trope, which may or may not have been a nod to Stick from Daredevil. To be fair, it could be dozens of other things, but that's the way I choose to see it. John Wick Chapter 4 is balls to the wall action and testosterone at its finest. And it also happens to be the #1 film in America this weekend. Anyone remember Ant-Man 3 or Shazam 2?
Well, but they're not the same, right?
And it looks like that almost 3-hour runtime didn't affect it very much. It may down the road. We'll just have to see. But if you haven't seen this movie, I highly, highly recommend watching all 3 previous films before you watch the 4th. Up until the end, this is just another good John Wick film. A man motivated by love and loss and willing to kill everybody for it. Now we get into the very brief spoiler section, so if you want to skip this to the end, go right ahead, or again, better yet, go see the movie. You have been warned. This is indeed the end of the John Wick series, at least for now. Is there a possible out? Sure, but John Wick does die at the end. But not before helping Winston not only be reinstated to the high table and as management, he also gets the Continental back, and the high table's gonna pay for it. He also helps redeem Kane, who was forced into service by the high table and the Maquis because they were threatening to kill his daughter. I guess in a way, he did help the Tracker by not killing him and saving his dog. There's a point in the film where they explain that the Tracker wanted to buy his way out from under the high table, Kane wanted to serve his way out from under the high table, and John Wick wanted to kill his way out from under the high table. And no matter how hard you try, there's always consequences, something they talked about in the 3rd film. Now, stay to the very end of the credits. There is a post-credit scene that involves Shimazu's daughter, Akira, and Donnie Yen's Kane, which could be a possible spin-off, and the only one I'd be willing to sign up for right now. But even after all this, there really isn't a way out from under the high table. Or is there? In one of the final scenes, we see the Bowery King and Winston at John Wick's grave. And Winston says, "Das Vidania, my son." Is he John Wick's father? Is it just a father figure? Don't really know. Always suspected that. But is John Wick really dead, or is this just a ruse to get him out? I mean, the high table is still out there. I suspect if this movie does really well, there'll be another. Keanu Reeves will be making an appearance in The Ballerina, which I think comes out next year, starring Ana de Armas, and who wouldn't cameo in a film with her? For my part, I hope this is the end. I'm not even sure we need any spin-offs, aside from the one I mentioned in the spoiler section, because this was such a good finale. This was such a beautifully shot film. The cinematography was mind-blowing. And I, for one, do not have a single problem with the expanded lore that you get a lot of in the 4th film, and it turns it from a little action film into something mythological. But all of that depended on how they stuck the landing, and again, they did. And as long as they stay here, all the better. But they probably won't. It's John Wick's quest. It's his odyssey. And again, on rare occasion, Hollywood remembers why they are here, to entertain, so we can have some fun, escape for a couple of 3 hours. And in return, they can make a hell of a lot of money, and it certainly helps not to piss off A portion of your audience, half your audience, or all your audience? Yes, John Wick 4 is very good. It's tons of fun, remember fun, and it doesn't fall prey to modernity. So go see it. Have a good time. God knows you deserve it. And don't forget to raise a glass or a coffee cup to Lance Reddick. May he rest in peace. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, thanks for listening anyway. I'll see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.